In September 1944, the Allied advance across Western Europe is moving fast, almost too fast. Paris has been liberated. German forces are reeling, retreating, improvising, trying to hold what they can. And inside Allied headquarters, one idea starts to feel irresistible. End this war early, not next year. Not after another winter of grinding attrition, but soon. The concept is bold. Leap over the strongest German defenses, cross the Rhine, and drive straight into the industrial heart of Germany. It's a plan built on speed, surprise, and one fragile assumption: that a narrow corridor, a single road, and a chain of captured bridges can hold long enough for an armored spearhead to race through. The operation gets a name that sounds almost optimistic: Market Garden, market for the airborne landings, and garden for the ground thrust. And on paper, it looks like a war-ending masterpiece. In reality, it becomes one of the most haunting almosts of the entire war. The objective is simple to describe and brutally hard to execute. Seize a series of bridges in the Netherlands, over canals and rivers that slice the landscape into natural choke points, and force open a route to the Rhine. 3 airborne divisions will drop behind enemy lines to capture key crossings. Then British armored formation will punch up the road, link up with each airborne pocket, and reach the final bridge at Arnhem, across the lower Rhine. If that last bridge is held, the Allies get a foothold over the Rhine, and the door to Germany swings open. But before the first aircraft even lift off, Market Garden has built-in vulnerabilities. It's a plan that depends on timing more than firepower. Every bridge is a countdown, and the entire ground advance is funneling through a single elevated highway, a thin ribbon of asphalt raised above soft ground and low fields where tanks can't easily maneuver off-road. If that road is blocked by a destroyed bridge, a single ambush, a knocked-out vehicle, the entire operation slows, compresses, and becomes predictable. The corridor becomes not a spear, but a traffic jam. And the Germans, despite everything, are still very capable of exploiting a mistake. The sky fills with aircraft and gliders. It's one of the largest airborne operations ever attempted. American paratroopers of the 101st Airborne descend near Eindhoven and Veghel, tasked with holding the southern bridges. The 82nd Airborne drops further north near Grave in Nijmegen, aiming for critical crossings over the Maas and the Waal. And farthest of all, deep behind German lines, the British 1st Airborne Division lands near Arnhem, assigned the ultimate prize: the Rhine Bridge. If Arnhem holds, the plan has a heartbeat. In the south, the airborne landings begin strongly. The 1001st captures several objectives and fights quickly to secure the corridor because they understand something immediately. Even if you take a bridge, you still have to keep it. Meanwhile, Corps begins its push north, expecting to drive fast, almost like a relay race, handshakes at bridges, then onward again. But from the opening hours, the road reveals its nature: narrow, exposed, and prone to sudden stoppages. Up north, the 82nd Airborne faces a pivotal problem at Nijmegen. The bridge over the Waal is enormous, and if it isn't taken quickly, it becomes a locked gate on the entire operation. Fighting intensifies around the city. Time starts to slip, because every hour lost at Nijmegen is an hour Arnhem is left alone. And Arnhem is where the plan begins to bleed. The British 1st Airborne lands not directly on top of the bridge, but some distance away, in part due to terrain, air defenses, and the need for suitable drop zones. Imperial War Museums, that means the most important objective of the entire operation starts with a race through unfamiliar streets against a German enemy who is far less absent than Allied planners, because in the Arnhem area, German forces are not just scattered remnants. Elements of the SS Panzer Corps, including armored units refitting and reorganizing, are nearby. They're battered, yes, but they have vehicles, heavy weapons, command structure, and experience. And crucially, they are in the right place at the right time. A British battalion pushes toward the bridge and manages to seize the northern end. For a moment, it looks like the impossible part has been done. But the rest of the division is scattered by communications problems, German resistance, and the chaos of moving through a city under pressure. Radio links fail, units lose contact, and instead of a tight, unified defense around Arnhem's bridge, you get isolated pockets fighting their own wars. 8-20 down the corridor, Corps is advancing, but the corridor fights back. German units, retreating and reorganizing, strike the road at its weakest points. The flanks, they cut it. They ambush it. They turn the highway into a series of choke points. And every time the road is severed, everything behind it — fuel, ammunition, reinforcements, medical evacuation, stalls. What was supposed to be a lightning thrust begins to look like a procession. At Nijmegen, the Allies face the moment that will define the center of the operation. To take the wall bridge, troops must cross an exposed river under fire. It's a desperate, high-casualty action, but without it, the entire plan dies right here. When the crossing succeeds and the bridge is finally secured, it's an extraordinary feat, but it costs time, and Arnhem cannot be paid back with courage alone. By now, the British at Arnhem are holding on by splinters. German forces have contained the bridge position and are squeezing the perimeter. Relief was expected quickly, within days. But within days only works if every bridge falls on schedule, if the road stays open, and if resistance stays light. Instead, the British 1st Airborne is burning through ammunition, medical supplies, and options. Urban combat becomes house to house, room to room, and the defenders begin to realize that the plan is no longer about crossing the Rhine. It's about surviving long enough to be rescued. As the days pass, the situation at Arnhem shifts from offensive to endurance. The main British force consolidates around Oosterbeek, forming a defensive perimeter. They're fighting with dwindling strength, under artillery and pressure they were never meant to absorb alone. And the bridge itself, once the symbol of victory, becomes a symbol of isolation. To reinforce the trapped airborne troops, the Allies commit the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade, dropping near the Rhine at Driel under difficult conditions. But by this stage, reinforcement is like pouring water into a cracked vessel. The Germans control key crossings. The river becomes a barrier that turns coordination into chaos. Boats are scarce, the crossing is contested, and each attempt costs lives. 1,300 meanwhile, despite reaching Nijmegen, still cannot punch through to Arnhem in time. And the farther north the spearhead reaches, the more it relies on a corridor that is constantly being threatened behind it. A narrow front can be fast, but it also creates a single point of failure. And the Germans understand exactly where to hit. Not always at the tip, but at the shaft. 1350. This is the central tragedy of Market Garden. In many places, the Allies achieve the impossible. Airborne units take bridges they had no business taking. Ground forces push farther than planners ever dared to hope. And yet the operation is so tightly timed, so dependent on an uninterrupted chain, that a delay at one bridge becomes a catastrophe at the next. The plan doesn't fail everywhere. It fails at the point where it cannot afford failure, the final bridge. By September 25th, the reality is undeniable. The British 1st Airborne cannot be relieved, and to stay is to be destroyed. So the decision is made to evacuate what remains. A retreat across the river, under enemy pressure, in darkness, in rain, pulling survivors out of a perimeter that has become a graveyard of exhausted men. Market Garden ends with a corridor, yes, but not the breakthrough that was promised. The Rhine is not crossed. The war does not end in 1944, and the cost is severe, especially for the airborne troops at Arnhem, who suffer devastating losses in killed, wounded, and captured. So why did it fail? There isn't one reason, there never is. But Market Garden is a case study in compounded risk. A plan dependent on speed, operating on a single road, assuming limited resistance, and requiring perfect timing, executed in terrain designed by nature to punish delay. And when the Germans recovered faster than expected, when communications broke down, when the corridor was cut and recut, the operation didn't collapse all at once. It bled out hour by hour, bridge by bridge. And yet, there's another reason Market Garden still matters. Because it shows how close the war can feel to ending, and how quickly that feeling becomes an illusion. In September 1944, the Allies reached for a shortcut to victory. They almost took it, but at Arnhem, the shortcut ended at a river under fire with a bridge that could not be held. Operation Market Garden is remembered as a bold gamble, but for the men on the ground, it wasn't a gamble. It was a timetable written in blood, and a road that the enemy learned to cut. And in the end, the plan didn't fail because the idea was impossible. It failed because the margin for error was zero.